So, hello everyone, and welcome to the world's most complex construction projects, a special live event brought to you by the B1M in partnership with Autodesk Construction Cloud. It's fantastic to see so many of you signed up and joining us here today. We've got a really exciting agenda over the next hour. First of all, we're going to start off by looking at some of, lo and behold, the world's most complex construction projects. We're then going to take a deep dive on the 58-story new Salesforce Tower in Chicago, which is one of the world's most complex construction projects, and hear from the team just what it takes to make a building like that happen. So this is a real privilege for me, let alone anyone else watching, to really get an inside track on one of these incredibly complex projects. Just a bit of housekeeping. We're going to start off with a background on some of the world's most interesting projects and schemes. We're then going to do a bit of a presentation on Salesforce Tower and hear from Autodesk about their Assemble tool. We're then going to move into an open Q&A, so we can hear from all of you and want to hear as much of your feedback as we can and answer as many of your questions as we can. Do get those coming in throughout the session. Just pop them in the Q&A feature on Zoom. For me, that's on the bottom of the screen. It might be somewhere else depending on where you're watching us from today. But use the Zoom Q&A feature to pop as many of your questions in there. Now, as I said, I'm not alone today. I'm joined by a fantastic panel of experts, and we're going to hear from them now to introduce themselves. So I'm Fred Mills. I'm co-founder and MD of the B1M. Sam, can you give us a bit of an intro about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so my name is Sam Wagner. I am an assistant project manager for the Walsh Group. On Salesforce, my main duties are to assist with document control and managing smaller subcontracts on the job.
Fantastic. Matt, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Sure. Thanks, Fred. My name is Matt Tierney. I'm the program manager with the building group here at Walsh, and I work closely with our pre-construction and operations teams with the building group, and happy to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Zach, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Of course. Hey guys, my name is Zach, and I am one of the product specialists here at Autodesk. I work with the Autodesk Construction Cloud, and I help our customers find value in our new tools.
Awesome. It's great to have you with us. Elliot, can you give us a bit of background on who you are and the role you play?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Elliot Wilm. I'm an assistant project manager with the Walsh Group as well. I'm out on Salesforce Tower, coordinating, managing the structural trades out on site.
And last but by no means least, Mark from PERI. Can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Hello, everyone. Mark Henning. Manage the North Central Building Division team here at PERI. Been with the company for going on 16 years and held a variety of positions within PERI. And it has afforded me the opportunity to work with some great clients on some really cool, challenging projects like this. So excited for the opportunity to talk to everyone today.
Awesome. As I say, it's fantastic to have so many experts with us. I'm definitely feeling outgunned in terms of expertise, but that's the perfect way to be. So without further ado, before we get into Salesforce, as I said, we're going to talk to you about some of the world's most complex construction projects. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but these are some of the highlights from around the world. Kicking off with the LAX airport upgrade, $14 billion being spent here on new airport terminals, but principally on better enabling passenger flow through the terminals. So if anyone's ever been to LAX, I know I have, you can certainly relate to the passenger experience through that airport, particularly with how you get from the highway or the metro actually to the airport terminal. There's a new automated people mover being constructed to improve passenger flow. That's partly because it needs doing, but also partly looking ahead to the 2028 Olympic Games, Summer Olympic Games, which the city's hosting, and getting ready for that. All of this happening while the airport is operational and running. It's been made slightly easier during COVID with less passengers travelling through, but a pretty remarkable project. Over in London, where I'm talking to you all from today, the Elizabeth line, which is being constructed by Crossrail. Some of you are probably more familiar with the word Crossrail. An £18 billion project going from Reading out in the west of our country over to Shenfield in the east, basically digging a huge new tunnel beneath one of the world's oldest and most congested cities. Digging under London is next to impossible. You've got existing services, existing tube lines, building foundations. There's 41 upgraded stations. There's 10 complete build new stations. Easily one of the largest infrastructure projects in the world, and certainly one of the world's most complicated. Staying in Europe, Stuttgart 21, again, pretty extraordinary project. And it's worth saying this isn't the biggest of projects. It's still, best part of 7 billion euros. But it's not all about size. What we're talking about today is really about complexity. And Stuttgart 21 is definitely one of the most complex projects. They're taking an overground terminus station and converting it to an underground through station, literally completely reconfiguring how trains and services move through the center of what is Germany's 6th largest city. That picture on the right, on the left-hand side there, kind of gives you a flavor of just how crazy this is. Got these ridiculous chalice concrete-shaped support columns which are supporting a new park on top of a new underground terminal. Project started planning in 1994, which is now 27 years ago. Construction work started in 2010. It's now due to complete in 2025. Remarkably complicated project, again happening while the train station is being kept open. The Oslodijk upgrade in the Netherlands, for anyone that's familiar with the Netherlands and that part of the world, this seawall is quite literally what keeps the Netherlands dry and out of the ocean. So work's going on at the moment to upgrade that, again, while keeping it open and operational with cars running across it at all times, is a pretty extraordinary feat of engineering, particularly as it's effectively being built out on the open ocean, with all the elements and weather criteria that come with that. On that point, my personal favourite, sorry I shouldn't have favourites, but I do have a certain personal love of skyscrapers. Merdeka PMB 118 in Malaysia is going to become the 2nd tallest building in the world when it completes. Building something up to 644 metres in height, by any measure, is extraordinary. You're dealing not just with complex engineering, but as I said, the weather, the elements, it's a completely different world up there from where it is on the ground. And this, for me, let alone being a complex construction project, is probably one of humankind's greatest feats of engineering. Any tall building like this is. So from one tall building to another, Salesforce Tower. For those of you that don't know Chicago or aren't familiar with the city of Chicago, this is where we're talking about. So right in the heart of the city, right in the most congested part of that city, on what's an outcrop of land, that's what's known as Wolf Point. But by no means, certainly a very high-profile piece of real estate, right in the middle of the town, right in the middle of the city, sorry. Very visual, very easy to see and locate, and on show for the whole world. So the project that's being constructed there, you can see on the proposed side, is the 58-story new Salesforce Tower. But over on the over on the right here, you can see the site as it was at the beginning. So just behind it, over to the right-hand side, is Wolf Point East, that building with a sort of slight notch taken out of it, which was another project constructed by the Walsh Group team on this, what is a very small site. To show you the site from above, so this is actually the Wolf Point East development here, which is next to a building called the Merchandise Mart, which is a historic building in Chicago, which at the start of the project, before the COVID-19 pandemic began, was hosting events on a regular basis. And the project team actually accessed their site through the lower road that runs underneath the road you can see from street level. And the team are having to contend with deliveries and vehicles to do with major events going on in that building at the same time as trying to build a skyscraper on an incredibly small site. And if you can see there, but those foundations of Wolf Point East, that effectively is the site, and it's accessed from this very small road here, as you can see, that runs underneath the upper road running above. All next to the Chicago River, with retained basement, sheet piling, extraordinary feat of engineering. Looking down, this is the Salesforce Tower site. So this is just next to the Wolf Point East site. This site is actually accessed from just down here in the bottom left-hand corner, which the team are going to talk to you about in a moment. But again, you can see it's the same thing. Incredibly visual site right in the middle of Chicago, right on the river's edge, by neighbouring existing buildings, with below-ground basement car parks and roads. How they build a skyscraper on a site like this is beyond me. We're going to find out how it's done as we go through today's session, which brings me nicely onto that detailed look. So this is probably my favourite picture in the whole presentation, but we're going to find out how the team got from that dirt kind of undisturbed site I've just shown you up to this height with the tower crane. as we go through the presentation, hearing from each of them. So I'm going to bring back in our expert panel, which is a relief because they, as I've alluded to earlier, will probably know a lot more than me on this. And we're going to start by looking at pre-construction. So, I mean, I'm conscious I've talked a lot. I want to hear from you guys. How do you get a project like this through the pre-construction process? Do you want to take us away, Sam?
Yes, thank you, Fred. So you guys just saw several very great pictures that illustrated how difficult the logistics were on Wolf Point East, which is just east of Salesforce Tower. Some of the unique construction logistics that we had to deal with was the trestle bridge, which ran right along the river, maneuvering and coordinating with Merchandise Mart and their deliveries, and then also maneuvering around 4-story deep excavation that required several layers of cross bracing. So our success with dealing with these constraints really gave our client confidence in our ability to deliver on logistically challenging and unique projects. And so with that confidence, they came to us to start pre-construction on Salesforce Tower when it was just a handful of drawings. It was more massing diagrams than anything. And so how we approached it was we looked at these massing diagrams and we quantified what we could on the drawings, but obviously there wasn't a lot shown at the time. So we really pulled on Walsh's team's experience, historical experience, our broad skill set, and our relationships with the market and key subcontractors and personnel in order to deliver a comprehensive delivery plan for Salesforce Tower to our client. And this allowed our client to be able to react and adjust their business plans for the building prior to going down the path of developing full contract documents. And because they were able to react so quickly based on the information we were feeding them, they were in turn saving time and money as well. So we repeated this process looking at several schemes of the building over, I guess, a 3-year period, honestly. So some of the schemes that we looked at, there were taller tower, there were a shorter tower. At one point, there were some condos in the building. Other points, they had a hotel scheme. And so all these things really affected structure. So there were some schemes where there were several lower floors of pure concrete structure, concrete columns, elevated decks, that then also had some steel, which is now our current structure for the entire building. And then we also played around with several layers or depths of the basement as well. Right now we just have one level below grade, but we at one point were looking at 4 levels below grade, which matches east and the surrounding basement steps. So there was a lot of information, a lot of schemes that we were able to feed real delivery plans back to our client, and they were able to react quickly and kind of massage out the best business plan for this property and for this building. And while they were doing that, we were able to identify what were hold points in the project or things that really needed our attention, and in order to deliver the project on time and successfully. And one of these things, obviously, is the core, with each scheme, no matter how tall the building got, it really move the core around and the other structural elements such as columns in the building, and this in turn would affect the returnable square footage for our client. So pretty early on, we zeroed in on the importance of the core and the importance to deliver it efficiently and quickly to our client. So with that, I'll turn it over to Elliot. And he worked with our structural team during all these iterations to really have a developed plan to show our ownership, our client.
Yeah, so kind of taking a step forward here. Obviously, pre-construction, like Sam brought up, a lot of different renditions, a lot of different review cycles on different methods and ways to build it. I wanted to talk through a couple of the on-site progressive pre-construction efforts that are going on. Pre-construction doesn't stop as we go. Obviously, we are coordinating different scopes of work as we're building on the sections below it. So we have a tech manager out here, John Wu, who spends a lot of time working with these different programs here listed on the screen on a daily basis. And what we're using here is Navisworks. We're using that as our main set of software that actually combines our structural engineers model, architects model, even our fabricators model for all the structural steel. On that model in particular, we even have erection aids, for instance. So whereas it may not be required for the final turnover of the building, they need to install additional columns and beams to help coordinate the erection of the steel. So we can combine all these models along with different Revit models, AutoCAD models from each of the other contractors, and we're able to put it all into one model so that we could coordinate everything. Obviously, the main portion of it is mechanical, electrical, plumbing, routing, and everything else. But a couple things that we've included here, we've included models for the curtain wall embeds in conjunction with where splice joints are modeled and where splice joints occur in the field for structural steel that sometimes impact where those could be. We've incorporated from PERI Formwork anchor locations in a CAD file that's on this model as well. So we can find out where anchor locations are occurring right next to box outs so that we could coordinate a structural fix so that we can make sure that temporarily while the formwork is getting lifted that we don't have a structural failure due to its proximity to a hole. So a lot of good uses for this. We can go to the next slide here, kind of talking through some of the specific uses that we use this model for. Obviously, one of the large ones is going to be clash detection. So we're actually able to compare the different models together and find out where one plumbing pipe might be in the middle of a duct riser, or we find out where an anchor location is in an opening. So we're able to identify a lot of key problems and coordinate it on a case-by-case basis. One other good deliverable out of this process are composites, which are essentially 2D plans identifying where we need to create a penetration through either our 3.5-foot thick core walls, through our 400-pound-a-foot beams, or if we have to run something through a column. Obviously, there are going to be penetrations running through steel beams or concrete cores, so identifying where those have to occur. So John and the team basically take it to the level of detail and coordination to get them to a point where they can identify where they need these openings. We can take that and then coordinate structural fixes or adjustments to maintain those openings, and then they continue the process of kind of developing where every pipe is exactly going and how it's getting routed. One other key element that we've used here in particular, our surveyor superintendent, Tom Bennett, and John have both kind of worked together, and they've made 3D scans of some different elements on the project, and we've actually been able to incorporate those into our 3D model so that we can actually review what it looks like in the field, not just 2D plans and trying to discern what was done 10 years ago on an adjacent property. We know what it looks like today. Continuing on, obviously one of the big things that we can use this for is going to be logistics. So Fred, if you don't mind, go to the next slide here. So just a quick screenshot. This is an example of the Wolf Point East project that Fred mentioned earlier. We're doing something very similar here on Salesforce Tower. We're able to actually use BIM 360 glue and actually combine and make an easily accessible PDF viewer for our superintendents and field staff, so that we can go out in the field and actually see this, like the sequencing of work, and understand how each of the contractors have to work together to not only show how it's in the model, but to show how we have to get it built in the field. And then the last bit of software that we're using now here is Tekla. This is our self-performed concrete group. We use this for our estimates. So we actually take 2D drawings and we make a 3D model out of them. And we're actually able to export the quantities into a software called Vico. And that's how we perform our estimates. So that when we have, like Sam was saying, all the different renditions of the estimate phase and pre-construction phase, we're able to easily adjust our model, understand the effects that different designs may have on the structure. And this has also been very useful both at buyout phase as well as just daily construction meetings here on site. It's easy to pull up a model. It may not be 100% accurate, but it's close enough that it really is able to be useful in understanding the logistics behind scopes of work that we have to coordinate here.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for that overview, guys. I think that's one of the biggest things I think people perhaps need to understand who aren't familiar with these kind of projects, is that before you go anywhere near site, you've effectively built and coordinated the key elements of this building and project virtually. You've built it in a virtual space before you then go out and build it for real on site. So while it doesn't completely eradicate all the problems or all the errors, it does take away a lot of the surprises. Is that how you found the experience?
Yeah, absolutely. We were able to catch a lot of key element issues that we were going to run into. Obviously, like you said, we do run into problems on a daily basis. That's why we're here. We get it fixed. But having those models, having some conceptual understanding of what's coming up next, it's absolutely crucial to building a building and time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I said, we've had a really great detailed look here at pre-construction. I hope that's kind of whetted your appetite. The construction part of today's event is going to be absolutely awesome, because we're literally going to take you through how the foundations are constructed and how a core rises from nothing to 58 stories above Chicago, which is going to be really exciting. Just before that, we're going to hear from Zach a little bit about Autodesk Assemble. So for those of you that don't know, Assemble's a web-based model conditioning and visualization tool that lets construction teams get the best out of building information modeling across the whole project life cycle. So right from the beginning through construction to the end of the process. Construction teams around the world are using Assemble to prepare and design models for construction, conducting work in place tracking, generate quantities, and add data into design models without needing to use kind of heavy duty design tools like Autodesk Revit. So Zach's going to take us away. He's going to talk us a bit about Autodesk Assemble and how you can use it on your next project. So let me know when you're ready to go, Zach.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Fred. So I just want to start off with, essentially the model is just taken and we can organize it in different ways. And that's essentially what Assemble is going to be doing. In this video, as we see here, by default, it's grouped by category. And then the top left, I just selected a completely different parameter to group by. In this case, structure material. So over here, we can see a breakdown of all the structure materials in the model. Let's say that concrete, and then the quantities on the right side. We can go through, select a couple of objects. As we see in the 3D view, it gets selected as well. Once you have your object selected, you can actually hop over to the properties and actually regroup those objects you have selected. In this case, I just did it by bid package and then put them into concrete. Now, with those objects selected, I can just toggle them off again, hop over to the left side within our model tree. And within here, we're essentially using different rules to control what we're looking at. So in this case, I'm doing show only, bid package, and I'm just going to be specifying the concrete bid package that we just conditioned out. Once we click update, we're going to filter out every other object that doesn't have concrete as the bid package, essentially narrowing down the focus of what I care to see. Within here, I can expand in so the concrete cast in place, hop into the floors, a specific floor instance, and then hop back into the assembled properties on the right side. Now up there, we can see the assembled properties, as well as the model properties coming directly from Revit, in this case, provided down there. And that's how we're conditioning that inventory on the left side by default. So from there, I can hop over to the type, just other parameters we have available to us. I can add in more data within Assemble to just further condition the model. And after I've selected the assembled properties as well as model properties I want to use, I can add or remove those as columns, like we just saw on that previous screen. So again, if we focus into the inventory, we can see a list of all of those floors, the walls, and then again, I can go through, instead of grouping it by structure material, do it by bid package instead. And we'll just see that concrete one right there with the entire cubic yardage provided, as well as the count. Then a breakdown per category, and then per wall instance in this case. Now I'm just going to toggle on the 3D view again, as well as the PDFs. And what I can also do is colorize it. So if I want to understand, okay, where are these different structure materials or whatever the case may be within our 3D model? As we see here, we colorize by default right now category name, and we can obviously the representation on the left side. But now I'm just going to do by type name. And then our 3D model, as well as our inventory, will update accordingly to show that updated color. Cool. So I've selected a couple of objects in our inventory. And as you guys saw on the right side within the PDFs, when you hop over to a selected PDF, it'll essentially reference all of those objects on the 2D sheet. So not only can you rely on the 3D side, but we also have an interactive 2D sheet available to you guys. Cool. And I think that, oh, okay.
Yeah. You ready for the next video now, Zach?
Yeah, that should be good.
Yeah.
So with Assemble, there's a couple different workflows. This is essentially that first one. The one that we're going to look over now is the change management. So if I'm dealing with a project has multiple model iterations, I want to understand, okay, what changed between those models? You can upload both of those versions into Assemble. And as we see here, all I did was click one button called Show Changes, and we'll automatically configure the changes for you as well as colorizing it. So within our inventory, it just colorizes, okay, green added, red removed, etc. And then all of those objects get shown within our 3D view on the right side. And then the last workflow, this is for progress tracking in the field. So right now we're just leveraging a mobile application. I'm hopping into this thing called a view. And with that, I'm specifying colors to different statuses. So in this case, I believe blue was in progress, green was complete. The person in the field would have their iPad, they hop into this view, select their objects, in this case, these structural flanges, hop over to the properties, and directly in the mobile app, we can change the installation status. Well, I just want to show you guys all the properties right now. We can change, yeah, the actual finish. So the date that it was completed at. Click Save, so it applies to all of those objects selected. Now if I scroll up, again, all of those assembled properties, we also see that installation status. In blue, change it to complete and click Save. And if we just give this one moment, the color on the 3D object will update to green. And then this data gets automatically pushed back to the office. So you're not having to deal with any data loss between the field and the office and understand what got installed.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Like that was a really awesome look. Now we're just gonna, you guys would like a free poll, you guys like a free demonstration of Autodesk Assemble personalized to you. All you need to do is answer our poll. We're going to start the poll now. If you vote on it straight away, it will disappear from your screen. You can minimize it and choose to vote on it later if you'd like to. Completely your call. So the poll will launch now, and it should pop up in the middle of your screens. So as I said, vote on that now if you'd like to, and it will disappear, or feel free to minimize it or drag it out the way of your screen. But voting on that poll will be very helpful, thank you. And we can then, well, ourselves and Autodesk will be in contact after the event to follow up with a free personalized demonstration for you. Now, moving on from the pre-construction phase of Salesforce Tower to the construction phase, I'm going to bring in Matt here, who's going to start by kind of taking us through, well, start the process of taking us through the step-by-step methodology of how you make such an incredible building like this happen. Over to you, Matt.
Sure, thanks, Fred. Again, as mentioned earlier by Sam and Fred, during the pre-construction process, we're planning with our client and with our end user even to organize the site. How are we going to access the project? What's the site going to look like when we start? And it all starts with the foundations, right? the site has one access in and out of the area. And as Sam mentioned, it's underneath a historical building here in Chicago, the Merchandise Mart. There's a tunnel that was built on the previous project, and that is the only access in and out of the site. So with that being said, we're trying to figure out where we store all the materials, where we hoist all the materials from, and how we actually get started in rising up this concrete core, as mentioned earlier, above the city of Chicago, right here on the river. If you want to go to the next slide, Fred. The site is organized such that, and this view is turned 90 degrees. The east is planned top right here. That tunnel is where all of the deliveries will come in from, as we mentioned. So with that constraint and the amount of materials that we have to bring into the site and just-in-time deliveries, and I'll touch on that here a little bit later, the decision was made to actually place the tower crane in the concrete core because we have such a limited amount of space. That core is the best location after reviewing all of the materials we need to pick, how little area we have on site, and working with our trade partners to determine the best location inside the concrete core was determined to be that best location. So how do we do that? We had to engineer a solution. We'll talk about that here a little bit later with the concrete formwork as well. But the site is so constrained. We only have one delivery in and out. We have to put all these materials together on site and build this concrete core rising up again from the basement level. So let's go to the next slide, Fred. Because of this just-in-time delivery and all of these materials that we need to get to the site, the schedule really needs to be in lockstep. And here you see an image of that concrete core as it sits today. And on the left and the image on the right, you kind of see where that sequencing, how close together in lockstep the sequencing really needs to be in order to construct this concrete core. The concrete core is up 3-4 levels above the basket where the crane is anchored to. You could see those 2 points there right below the erecting sequence 1. And then down below, you see all of the levels that the other materials for the building are at. And that concrete core is just going to continue to rise as the central structure for the building. In the structural steel you'll see on the picture on the left, those first 4 levels follows close behind. But again, because of the site constraints, the tunnel in and out, we only have just-in-time delivery methods and schedules established in order to put this concrete core together. Let's go to the next slide, Fred, just to give you another idea of what kind of materials you're talking about. You see that concrete core right in the second elevator, or the tower crane right in the second elevator bank. In the concrete core formwork up at the top here. We are lifting this core. Essentially, we're building 1 floor of our elevator core every 4 days. And it's an astounding amount of material that we need to get to the site. Over 600 cubic yards of concrete, over 50 tons of reinforcing steel. And again, every 4 days, these materials are coming to the site in and out of 1 tunnel below the city of Chicago. So we have to really be in lockstep from a schedule standpoint, and the deliveries are just-in-time deliveries. If we have a delay of 2 to 4 hours, it throws off that 4-day cycle, and now we're in delay. So we talked about the logistics of the site. We talked about the placement of the tower crane. We'll get into that here a little bit later. But then we also had to come up with a very complex engineered solution on the formwork. And Mark's going to touch on that here a little bit. And take it away, Mark. And let's discuss the concrete core itself.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, so for this project, PERI designed and supplied our latest hydraulic climbing system, the ACS Core 400. So this is what we call a self-climbing core system. The entire core needed to be installed and climbed from pour to pour on its own, independent from the crane, because the crane was needed and focused on the steel erection for the building below. So once this system is mounted on the building, it's completely independent from the crane, and it allows all the contractors to access all of the important operations they need. So specifically, this system is comprised of the highest lifting capacity in the market, with 40-ton single-stroke cylinders that jump the entire system together from lift to lift. Innovative hydraulic controls allow you to climb all 4 cells together at once, which eliminates all leading and open edges. But you also have the ability to climb 1 cell at a time or toggle on and off any individual cylinder to control it as you may need. We also have large open platforms to provide safe and comfortable working access for all the trades. But also on this project, it was specifically important because they needed real estate to land all of their supplies, tools, generators, placing boom. And one example specifically on this project is we needed to store and lift an additional 100,000 pounds of rebar. So another feature of the system is its flexibility. We're able to accommodate complex geometries, climb past wall steps. We can pour the core with the slabs or ahead of the slabs, as you're seeing here. And we're also able to provide a lot of customized, tailor-made solutions for the project and to suit the customer's need. So go ahead to the next slide. So this is just a quick animation to provide an overview and a little bit of context of how a core system is installed, and then we'll also walk you real quickly through the typical climbing sequence. It goes kind of quick, but at least it'll provide some context. Go ahead, Fred. So after the first pour is complete, the internal formwork is removed and flown out, and the internal core system is installed with trailing components staged in the bottom, the working platforms mounted direct to the concrete, and then the internal formwork is reinstalled and attached to the structure. The +1 level is flown in, attached to the structure, handrails are added, placing boom is added as needed, and from here you can climb with the hydraulics for the rest of the project. Typical sequence, you remove the bolts from the upper red working brackets, shift the weight of the system to the lower yellow brackets, you extend the hydraulic cylinder, pushing off of the lower yellow climbing bracket, which advances the entire system to the next pour, where it is secured to the embedded anchors in the next pour. At this point, the system's ready for working, rebarring, and everything. And as time permits, you come down to the lower trailing platform, remove the bolts, recover the climbing cones, and use the hydraulics to pull that back up into position. So this process basically repeats pour after pour all the way up the building. And one note I wanted to point out on this animation is we're showing that the core is climbed with the concrete slabs and the internal slab poured there. But on this project, we're actually climbing the core completely ahead of the steel structure. Go ahead. Okay, so after seeing how it goes together in theory, some actual project shots of how the core was installed. Starting in the upper left, we see the pre-assembled Barrio formwork system installed and casting the first pour. And in the cell 1 there, you can see that the internal formwork has just been removed in order to prep for the installation of the climbing system. And you can also see right from the beginning that tower crane was installed on the foundation within the formwork system and is being used to service the entire job right from the beginning. Then moving to the upper right, the ACS Core 400 is being installed. As Matt mentioned, site logistics and timing is extremely important. So we went through a lot of detailed coordination meetings for the specific delivery sequence of all of the critical components that we pre-assembled so that they could pick them right off the truck and put them right into place. And this specific sequence was essential for maximizing safety in production and keeping the schedule on time. In the lower left, you can see that the external formwork and the external platforms are now mounted on 3 of the cells. And at this point, no more crane is needed to jump that system. We push with the hydraulics right off the foundation, and this is climbing on its own with no more crane for the rest of the building. And then on the lower right, you can see the system climbed up. I believe that's the 4th pour. This system is completely installed. And we've also added an additional lower trailing platform that was a project-specific need for the steel erectors to access the lower embeds and attach the steel connections. Okay. Next slide. So here's another vantage point of the project. As you can see, right in the heart of the city, right up against the river. It was a really challenging and rewarding project. And with the full system mounted on the building, typically it's smooth sailing from here. But there was another couple of structural challenges that are still upcoming in the near future. So a couple of those structural changes are wall steps. The building steps, the walls reduce in thickness at the 7th, 22nd, and 40th floors. So we needed to make sure to design the system to climb past those, allow the closing of the open gaps in the platforms, and then obviously modify the formwork to fit the new geometry. At level 10, there are some heavy-duty structural steel embeds that protrude from the wall that needed to be cast into support. So we had to design the formwork to accommodate that installation, and also the platforms to hinge open and climb past those. At level 38 to 40, heavy steel belt truss structural steel is installed. So we needed to make sure to coordinate the over-the-top gantry system to accommodate for the installation of those. And then at cell 40, the structure changes. The 2 outer cells fall off, and we transition from a 4-cell core to a 2-cell core. And then on the next slide, we'll go through a couple of project-specific features, specifically the integrated tower crane, the 126-foot suspended stair tower, the monorail system that we installed on the top to help with the installation of the heavy steel embeds, and trolley beams on the lower platforms of the internal system to help with the installation of the elevator beams down below where there was no crane access. So I believe Elliot was going to comment on a few of these and provide a little bit of information of why these were important to be included in the core system.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So I did want to highlight a couple of those. I did want to start off by saying this particular single coordination effort had to be probably one of the most involved and labor-intensive coordination efforts I've personally ever been involved in. And so we've been coordinating this core several months before we had this core out on site. So we were doing it well. Pretty much as soon as we were awarded the project, we started coordination, and we had 30+ people on coordination calls every week. And this is project management, superintendents, engineers, designers, detailers from PERI, from Walsh, from our erector, everyone else, all kind of led by our senior superintendent, Roy Eichland here. Really took a lead on kind of coordinating each of these elements. Some of the elements that we're highlighting here are really structural steel related. Typically, it's more of concrete operations. They can dictate what they want to do with the core, work with the formwork supplier, in this case PERI, and kind of derive how they want the system designed. Here we have the whole added kind of conflict of having components of the core designed around structural steel operations as well as core. So as Matt kind of touched on in the beginning here, is the core operations have to be in sequence with the structural steel operations. So if we see the photo on the right here, you can see how close the core system at times comes to the crane. So the crane has to jump prior to the core jumping up. Obviously the crane going up means that the structural steel below has to follow up. You don't want to be setting steel 20 floors down from where the crane is. And in addition, you need, like Mark mentioned, this supported stair tower, which hangs from our -1 platform, hangs down 126 feet, which right now is maxed. It's pretty much maxed out with where structural steel operations are. So it is important to know where the steel decking is, where steel erection is, when the core is jumping, when the tower crane's jumping, when structural steel has completed their welding of the shear lugs on the core. So there are several operations all occurring at the same time that have to happen in sequence. If one of those steps is not done or is not ready, then the rest of them are on hold until they are ready. So identify a couple of the key design components here that are a little different than what you would normally see on a core climbing system here. So the trolley beams, you could see identified at the bottom of the photo here. The tower crane is used to set every structural beam along with bundles of decking around the footprint. Obviously, the core form over the top does not allow for you to drop any material over through the top of the crane or top of the core form system down to where you're erecting steel below. So the trolley beams are used to actually have essentially a chain fall to support and drag those beams in and set them underneath the core system where you're covered overhead. Mark brought up the monorail up top. Monorail, we have 4 500-pound embeds typically on the level. So we have thousands of embeds in the core, all too heavy to set just by one person setting them. So we have an assist system up there basically to help drop those embeds down and install them. And then what they had, that whole -1 platform, like Mark said, that is mainly for the steel erector. That whole -1 platform otherwise really wouldn't be there if it was just a core operation. Obviously, to set steel quicker, bolting is a lot quicker than welding. So what we do is we cast in those embeds, then we move the form past it so that the -1 platform is in line with those embeds. The steel erector welds on shear lugs, basically steel plates to those embeds that have bolt holes. And then those pass through the form system as the core climbs up. As steel erection gets to that floor, they just bolt to that shear lug, making it a lot quicker of an erection standpoint. Mark did touch on a couple key impacts here. So the photo on their left here, this is what the form system looked like when we started. We actually had to, the crane is an older crane, so we actually had to model what the basket looked like off of 2D CAD files. And we modeled it to see where it lined up with the core system. Our superintendents here had to coordinate where every support and brace went around this basket, which was in place when they had to form the walls around it. And the photo on your right, this is what the system looks like now. When the crane jumps, the actual climber basket in red up above, which is what lifts the actual crane, actually goes into the -1 platform and 0 platforms. So we actually had to identify and show in plan every time we were jumping the crane where the core would be at the time. And we had to do that for the city permit to even jump the crane in the first place. So all this had to happen prior to even getting permit drawings to build the core mat foundation, as far as the city of Chicago would let us. So a lot of coordination efforts here.
Fantastic. Well, guys, thank you so much for that comprehensive look at this project. I kind of loved construction beforehand, but then just hearing that and kind of understanding what you guys deal with and contend with every day, and then what you're achieving at the end of it is just, it's truly awesome. I have so much respect for you and teams like you around the world that do this. It's pretty much the best industry in the world from my perspective. So that's great. We're going to go into the Q&A now. So we're going to do a bit of a quick fire Q&A to get through as many questions as we can. I'm going to kick off, that's okay. So one thing I've always been interested in is how they get this crane that's built inside the core that's gone up to 58 stories in this skyscraper. How do they get it off the building again at the end of construction? My 6-year-old son asked me, is there like a really big crane that goes around the world helping other cranes off skyscrapers? How does that happen? How do you guys do that at the end of the day?
Yeah, I can weigh in on this one. So when we actually sit in pre-construction meetings, when I first started learning here at Walsh, talking to Roy Eklund, he always says, taking the crane down will dictate more where the crane has to go than what you have to pick, which is something it's hard to understand, but you have to have a plan of how you get whatever you build, you're building around it. So in theory, it's going to always be harder to get it down. The plan here is, so a little contextual basis in the building design here. So level 57 is our last, what I'm going to call full floor plate size floor. 58 steps in on the east and west side, so the floor plate thins out. 59, 60, 61, 62 are essentially smaller floor plate mezzanines. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave off the whole southeast corner of level 58, 59, 60, and 61. And we're going to set up a stiff leg derrick on level 57. So a stiff leg derrick, imagine a tripod for a camera, only with instead of a camera, it's a 100-foot long boom. We're going to set that up on level 57, and it's going to be able to reach up to the top of the core to dismantle the crane piece by piece. Now, the crane will be lowered to its lowest position possible to make that lift accessible. And then it's going to dismantle every counterweight by itself, the turntable by itself, the cab, the housing, the engine, and then the jib. If you actually, one of the last photos on the screen, you can see the boom that's sitting right next to it. The boom is going to be the hardest part to take. The boom is longer than our project site is long, given where our hoist is. So it's 170 feet, 10 foot by 10 foot cross-sectional dimension. What they're actually going to do is they're going to use the boom to lower it, but then use skinner lines, which are essentially steel cables tied to the top of the building, tied to the podium down below. And they're going to use that as a guideline so that no gust of wind or something can kind of sway that piece of that boom into the building. So they're going to use those skinner lines to hold and control that boom as it drops down.
That's fantastic.
And then one last, so the derrick itself obviously needs to be dismantled. That can be dismantled into pieces small enough to get into the construction hoist and down the building.
Wow! So it comes down the building it's built, which is pretty, pretty phenomenal. Don't forget, guys, the poll is still open. We've had an astonishing 85% turnout rate on the poll. So do vote on the poll if you haven't done already. Right, some quick fire questions. This one's from Matt. This is from an anonymous attendee. Did you consider barges on the river as a way of getting materials to site?
Yes, Fred, we absolutely considered barges on the river for materials on site. We've done that before along the Chicago River on previous projects. For this project itself, it actually was not feasible because of the depth of the river right at that location. Also, it's cost prohibitive. We were able to plan ahead accordingly, as we mentioned earlier, with all of our site logistics and coordinating all the deliveries through that one single tunnel underneath the east building. And as long as we, again, have those just-in-time deliveries, we're able to pull it off.
Fantastic. You're getting quite a lot of questions, Matt, I'm afraid, but specifically asking for you. But another quick one. Were there any things you learned from the Wolf Point East project that you brought onto the Salesforce Tower project, and did any of them lead to quicker time or quicker schedule? I guess that's for the whole Walsh team.
I think all three of us could probably handle this one, Fred. We definitely learned what it took to construct a building right along the river. On the East project, we went 6 levels down. So we learned what that access meant, again, from the lower Merchandise Mart Drive under that historical building adjacent to the site. And also learned really what it took to build next to such an active building. That is an exhibition hall site or building where there are shows and events every day, every weekend. So coordinating all those deliveries just around the streets of Lower Chicago was a learning experience in itself.
Absolutely. Another question has come in, which I guess could be for PERI and the Walsh team. This is really interesting to me as well. There's that astonishing bit of the presentation where you said that, every 4 days, initially you're adding a new floor onto the core, and every 3 days at the top, you're adding a new floor onto the core. This is about concrete curing time. So is it safe to add another floor when that concrete's only had 3 or 4 days to cure?
You want to take that one, Elliot?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, Mark, why don't you start, and I'll finish here.
It absolutely is safe, and it is something that is detailed and calculated. That sequence, what concrete strength mix is being used, what are the break capacities at different times, and then also analyzing the rebar and the depth of the anchors and how the reaction forces and loads from the system are transferred into the structure. So it is definitely safe. It is something that is discussed in great detail with both us and the contractor. But anything to add to that, Elliot?
Yeah, no. So as part of the job, so just for kind of some specifics here on Salesforce Tower, we've done essentially maturity testing, which is testing the concrete strength for the first few days, understanding its strength gain. Typically, you do this for PT slabs where you need a certain PSI in strength, and then you can stress all the tendons. Here, we're trying to understand exactly how quickly either our 10 KSI or our 12 KSI concrete mixes are going to perform, so that we have a level of confidence that we know the next day when we go to retract, which is when you're actually pushing off of that lower level where you had just poured. Otherwise, you're hanging onto the floor below that. So that's had a whole cycle of cure time, whereas when you go to retract the core, it's temporarily holding on what you just poured. So we did quite a bit of analysis and testing to understand exactly where that strength was, to make sure it was designed in the box outs near the anchors as well were designed for that, either by filling them in or by putting additional reinforcements so that at that strength concrete, we could achieve the proper non-pry out.
And adding to that, even, based on which season we're in, right? Those mixed designs are engineered and tested through the winter months, summer months. That all also goes into account as far as lifting.
Yeah. And our on-site superintendent
I would
here,
absolutely love
to. Sorry, I keep doing that to you. Our on-site superintendents are making that call. So we have Ken Hoyle and Ronnie Eichmann out here. So those guys are actually on a cycle-by-cycle basis analyzing whether they need to add mixtures into the concrete. For instance, we could throw accelerator for the first 50 or so yards of the core pour, and that'll help spike the concrete. It'll help get it going quicker as far as that catalytic reaction of getting the heat going, so that it gains strength a little bit quicker. Whereas during a summer month, you may or may not need to do that. Winter month, to Matt's point, you might need to do that.
Definitely. I would love nothing more than to talk about this. I could literally talk about this all day, but we're going to run out of time, unfortunately. But I just want to ask each of the panelists, if we can, at the end, I'm going to ask each of them what they've enjoyed most about this project so far, what they've found most fulfilling about this project so far. Just before I come to each of the panelists, and just to give them a bit of time to think, I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that's tuned in and completed the poll. We had 94% turnout for the poll, which is awesome. So thanks everyone for doing that. It's much appreciated. If we haven't managed to answer your question, we are going to endeavour to get back to you over email in the days and weeks ahead. So we'll try and get you an answer. We've got 37 audience questions. I think we've answered 4 of them. So that's not a great result for us, but we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So I mean, Sam, starting with you, what have you most enjoyed about this project?
For me, the most enjoyable part has been the project team and all the players that we have on this job. I mean, it's one of the most complex jobs in the world. It's a job that's you're going to notice it in Chicago. And for me to be able to be exposed and see how these people think and all of their experience, it's just been phenomenal. So
definitely. Elliot, how about you?
Mine has to be probably this whole kind of change up at bid time, going into the structural steel operations and change in logistics plan. I don't always feel that was my favorite part, but it's definitely been a really good learning experience, and kind of working with each of the different team members, talking to our team, our steel erector, coming up with whatever plan we can make work, and just a daily challenge of keeping you interested, keeping things moving quickly. And I feel a sense of accomplishment that we've gotten to this point in the job. Obviously, a lot of players to thank for that. So, but it's been fruitful for sure.
Definitely, Mark. How about you?
It's been quite a journey. I mean, this is such a unique project. There's been so many unique challenges and solutions that have kind of pushed us to innovate and come up with new ideas and rise to the challenge to meet the project needs. And then I'd say one other thing that I really was proud of or enjoyed was just seeing the project team, pull together, all of the coordination, all of the communication that needed to happen with everything going on in the world right now. working from home, maybe some stay-at-home things in place, the procurements, the meetings, all of that happened, everyone kind of stepped up and rose to it. So you would never know that we were fighting all of those challenges in the background.
Definitely. And last but not least, Matt, how's it been for you?
Sure. Just to pile on, Fred, the complexity of this project is just amazing. And, the collaboration with all the team members, our client, the end user, everyone is pulling on the same rope on a very, very difficult site here in Chicago, but also a prominent site. And, putting it all together to accomplish what we've accomplished so far is been the most enjoyable part of the whole process.
I can imagine. I mean, Zach, I've got a different perspective from you, but how do you feel seeing software tools that you're involved with, helping people use and understand and reach and make use of? How do you feel when you see those kind of things used on complex projects like this, enabling amazing buildings?
I mean, I love it. I think BIM is the future, and seeing it used more and more with projects like this one is huge.
Yeah, definitely. Well, guys, thank you so much for your time today. I think inevitably talking about complex construction projects, we have to go deep, we have to go complex. So it was really good to get in and understand, just a fraction of what you guys are up against every day. It's been awesome. I also think stories like this are so powerful for young people watching today and all around the world who are trying to work out what they want to do with their life, to do something as fulfilling and challenging, as exciting as this, and then have those results at the end of the day. You go around a city and say, yeah, I built that, I was part of that, I made that happen. For me, there can't be any more fulfilling job in the world. So this has been absolutely awesome. I literally wish it was 5 hours longer, because I could literally talk about this all day. I'm quite tempted now to quit the YouTube channel altogether and go and work with these guys, but I'll get back to you on that. So anyway, thank you everyone that's taken part today. It's been great. Thank you Autodesk for sponsoring and helping us make this happen. Big thanks to PERI and Walsh for all their time and effort and all the planning they went into this as well. Not they haven't just had skyscraper logistics, but all the logistics of planning this webinar with us, which has been an extra level. So thank you to everyone that's attended, and we'll be in touch and see you soon. Cheers. Thank you.